Okay, let's practice with the form information that we have. This is quite a complex form, so you will be given the code for it, but we're going to go through it in very good detail, do some computational thinking as well. There are some new information. I'm going to be doing a separate video on the favicon because it's kind of a separate topic. But for our form, and we won't really have a back end that's actually going to process the data in the form that the user puts in. So we are going to be using this .prevent default method to stop the action attribute of the form. So it's really not going to go to a separate page that's going to process the data. So you will be seeing this method used in our code, but it is new. Just know that it stops it from going to that action page, and it will allow us to then run some other JavaScript there on the same page. .test is also new. We're going to be looking at a regular expression. It's going to look like this so that we can make sure that the user put in a valid credit card number. In real life, that could be any number, as long as when it gets tested, it's a real credit card. But in our case, we're actually going to have one number that they can put in, because normally you would be able to use a credit card service to check a number, but we're not going to have that part in our code. That's more of a backend. So anyway, there will be a .test method that works with that regular expression that's going to return either a true or a false, depending on if they got the right credit card digits. All right, and then we will have a .trim, because sometimes users, as they're entering information into a input field, they'll put some spaces at the beginning or spaces at the end, which might mess up, our count for digits or things like that. So we are going to use this .trim method to take the value that they put into that credit card input box and make sure it eliminates those leading and trailing spaces. So just a few things that you might see that we haven't seen yet. So here's the idea with this form. They're going to be able to choose one. Let me start that over. They're going to be able to choose either credit card or PayPal. Then it will show the corresponding details that they would need for that. And then it's going to also be looking that some of these are going to be required fields. And in the case of this credit card number, it should be 1234 1234 1234 1234. So it's not a valid credit card number. The expiration date, the year 24, is also old. And so if you make sure it's going to have that validation also in our JavaScript and be able to take us, it's going to actually not take us to a new page. It's just going to replace the page content with an H2 that thanks them for their purchase. So a little different from real life because we don't have a back end, but it will be really good for us to learn all the front end things that we need to know about forms. Not only will there be validation with what type of input we have, but we will also add some validation with that credit card number and the expiration date in our JavaScript as well. So let's go ahead and create this HTML page, and then we're going to talk about the computational thinking a little bit because you'll need that for your assignment this week. So in the Ponder folder, I'm just going to go ahead and do a form.html, and I'm going to throw all this code, and everything is complete here. Oops. And throw that in there. Okay, let's take a look at what we're seeing here. And we are going to do this favicon later, but we have already linked up the CSS and JavaScript when we get there. But right now, let's just go ahead and look at this section right here. Is going to be where any error messages might show up. And right now it's just empty. It's got the class of errors. We have a form here. It does have an action. So this is typical of what you might go to a different page to process that backend information. This actually is not going to go to a completed.html. So it's really not going to go anywhere because in our JavaScript, we're going to have prevent default and it's not going to go anywhere. So it doesn't matter what you've got in that action. That's really not going to happen. Same with method. It's not really sending the data anywhere. But we do have our labels for their full name. Notice that that's required. So is the email. Our address is also required. Here we have a drop down so that they can either choose the credit card or the PayPal. And right now, to help with the ARIA, with those with using screen readers, we do have it so it shows that it's not expanded yet. So in JavaScript, we're going to make sure that we tell the user when they click on credit card or PayPal that that is now expanded and they'll be able to read more information there. So we have some good accessibility going on there. All right, so now we also have the information that's going to show up when they choose one or the other here. So we're going to hide it to begin with, right? So let's go ahead and make that CSS so we can see. So we're going to give it the same name, forms.css. And we're going to skip the JavaScript. I don't even want you to look at it right now. I want to kind of think about it before we do it, since we're just giving you the code. But notice we do have this hide. So anything with the class of hide is going to not be shown. So we can see that this whole, we've got it inside this paragraph, the whole label and input for all the credit card is going to be hidden to begin with. But you'll see we have some information here. We do have a little bit of validation going through HTML and the requireds here. And we do have some ARIA that we talked about because we have one label for two inputs, the month and the year for their credit card. And so we did need to say these both go with the same label, with these ARIA labeled by. Because usually you would have 4 with 2 IDs, but the IDs need to be unique for those two. And then here is the information for the PayPal that again is hidden to begin with. And it's a little simpler than the credit card because they just need to put username, and there's no, we're not going to, you can type anything for the username at this point in this one. Again, in real life, they would probably compare that, of course, to their database of usernames. And then there's our submit button. All right, let's think about what we would need for this to run. So if you go back to the video here, what are we trying to accomplish here? So first of all, we're going to have both of the credit card hidden until you choose one of those. And that's going to trigger an event. So we can start thinking about that. What is that event going to be? And when that drop down changes is basically what it is. What are we listening for? We're also going to be looking at that validation to make sure that they have the right credit card input and that they have the right date and year. So we're going to be handling some of that in JavaScript as well. So I would sit down and I would start thinking about the process of what kind of things I'm going to need to do. And you might come up with something like this in your pseudocode. It's quite lengthy, but you're going to be, using query selector or maybe get element by IDs to focus on a lot of these things. So looking at the inputs that the user is going to be putting information for, because we're going to need to validate the information there. We're also going to be checking to see, getting that drop down so that we can see, add an event listener so that we can check to see when they change their value, either to credit card or PayPal there. Then when that happens, so we're going to be listening for that drop down. And when that happens, we're going to want to be able to start out with both of them being hidden, remove the required from both, because if we try to submit the form and they're still required in PayPal, even though it's hidden, it still won't let us do that. So that's something that you might have missed in your pseudocode or your computational thinking, but you would definitely notice it later when the error comes. But if you kind of think ahead of that, you can put that on there in your pseudocode. If the user selects credit card, we're going to need to be able to show those inputs and labels, or that whole paragraph that had all that, and make sure that that credit card one is required, because we had removed the required from both here. And then if they select PayPal, then do the same thing there. And then we are going to handle that ARIA expanded to let them know that now it is expanded. And then with the validation here, we're going to have an error that's going to go ahead and show that on the page, but it won't be called until an error happens. We'll have a function to check the validity of their credit card number. We're specifically going to test for 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And then we have another event that we're going to be listening for that's going to go when the submit button gets sent. And normally that would be the action attribute, but for us, we're going to call a submit handler function. It's going to stop that default, and we're going to clear out any error messages that may have already been there. If it's a credit card, we're going to check that it's 16 digits long, and we're going to make sure it's valid according to our valid here. So we'll probably call the function from in here to check that, and make sure that the card is not expired. And if then there are any errors, we need to go ahead and show those errors and stop it from being submitted. And then if it is good, if there's no errors, then we can give them that thank you message. So lots going on, but that's kind of the process that you would go through to kind of think through what you need to do with the code. And this is pretty close to code at this point. So that would have taken a while on your own, but I did want to not skip that step and just go straight to the code, because I think it will help you understand the code a little bit better as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get that JavaScript and go ahead and add that form.js and paste it there. Okay, so let's take a look. Make sure it's running properly, and my CSS is not working. It should be in Ponder. I've got them outside of Ponder. Oh, I put an S. That is the biggest mistake I always made. Adding S's when there's not S's, or taking it out when it should be there. Okay, there we go. My CSS is working. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just put in some information here. And these were required. If I had left one of these out, for example, the address, we'll leave that out. And let's do PayPal first and put any name for PayPal. Hit place order, it's going to make me go back. Okay, so that's just with the required attribute inside HTML. So that's how each of those work. Didn't even get to JavaScript at that point. And it should let us go ahead and get to the thank you message. Now, if I do this again, let's go ahead and choose credit card this time, and let's put in that wrong number. So I'll just do one. So it's the last 4 digits or last 3 digits are wrong. And we'll also put in an expired address. We should get 2 different error messages. And of course we can fix that just like the video and go ahead and it should let us go through. Okay, so everything's working okay. So let's go back to JavaScript and figure out what all of this is doing. Okay, this first section was just us targeting all those different elements in our form. So we have let's look at the IDs here. We have the whole form has the ID of checkout form. And so that's targeting the entire form. And then we also have the payment method, which I think is that drop down. Yep, payment method, which is our select with the different options there. We also have our credit card number container, which is the whole thing with all the credit card information in it. That's what we're going to hide and show. And then we have the same for the PayPal container. Then these two are a little different, and this might be a little new as well. We've put a space input, so it works just like CSS. So when you have a space, you're saying the input inside of the container need to be all the credit inputs and the PayPal input. All right, so then we have, let's come down here. What's going to happen first? We're going to be looking for this payment method. And again, that's our select. Do we already have it up here? Nope. Oh yeah, we did. We didn't need that again. That's extra. Anyway, we're going to add an event listener. And what we're listening for in a dropdown is change. That means they've chosen credit card or PayPal. And what's going to happen then is that toggle payment details is going to get called. And that's what's going to trigger all of this information here. Notice we're sending in E, which is the object event. Every event has this. It's not an argument we had to send in, but it's a parameter that can come in automatically that has a lot of information about where they clicked, what they clicked, and all that. We've seen that briefly before. So we're going to say, hey, take whatever they clicked, grab the value. Target means which item did they click, and get the value. So what's going to be here is either the PayPal or the credit card. We're going to initially have both of those hidden, and both of them are going to not be required to begin with. If they chose credit card, if that value was credit card, then we need to go ahead and remove hide so that that shows for the user and make it required. If they chose PayPal, same thing. Make sure it's not hidden anymore and make sure it's required. Now, this was important because if we didn't take off those requireds, even though we would submit for PayPal, it would still be looking for those required credit cards that the user wouldn't even see. So that's why we need that extra bit there. Here is where we're going to be letting the screen readers know that they have chosen something and to expand it. So whether they chose credit card or PayPal, we're going to go ahead and say, yes, it's been expanded. Otherwise, it stays false, which it was originally. All right, so let's go down the validations and errors. So this area is going to be taken care of once they submit. So this event, it won't be the drop down, it will be the clicking of this place order button that will trigger this information. So again, let's start where that would start. We're going to be looking at the entire form, and we're going to be looking for that submit for the form, which is in that submit button. It's going to call submit handler first. So it's going to come up here and it's going to say, hey, prevent it from actually going to that action page and doing these because we really don't have a backend. And we're going to set up an error message, and it's going to be blank to begin with. And we're also going to make sure that anything's cleared out. If we ended up having another error, like with our credit card, and then we switch to PayPal, it's just going to sit there. So we're going to make sure there's no errors showing to begin with as well. This is an actual call to display error, which is right here. And it's going to send in the message, right? The first time it's going to just be empty, so it won't show any errors. But this could call later if there is an error. All right, back to the submit handler. We're going to make sure that we have the credit card number ID, which is right here. So whatever they put in as the credit card number, we're going to be testing that. So we're going to say if the value in that was credit card, then we're going to go ahead and check to see if it's valid. Here is that regular expression that makes sure it's 16 digits. And if it's not that, then it's going to add to our error message variable here that the card is not valid. The /n is just so it gives a line return in our output. It's also going to check to make sure that the value we got from the year and month are going to be valid. So we're going to put those two that we got from the user into those two variables. And we're also going to grab the current date of our computer system and put it into current date. So we're going to say, hey, if the current, if 2000 plus the year, the 2-digit year they put in there is less than the current year that we're currently in, so that would be, it was expired. Or also if that year is expired, and look at the month as well, if it's less than or equal to the current month. Any of those is going to give an error if any of those are true, and it's going to say a card is expired. If there happened to be an error, meaning it wasn't empty at this point because it got one of these values assigned to it, and notice plus, so if it's not valid in two different ways, credit card and expired, they will both show up. If there is an error, then we're going to run that display error, send in the error message, and go ahead and change that from maybe empty to now having a message there. Okay, notice also that not only does it display the errors, but it's going to say return. It's going to kick it out of the function altogether. So this would not run. So if this never runs and never sees return because this it doesn't have any errors, it will come down here then and go ahead and grab the checkout form, which is the entire form basically, and just replace all of its inner HTML with that H2. So we're really staying on the same page with this one, which is maybe a little different from real life. But there we have what is happening. And I know it's a lot, but forms are really important. They're used all the time. It's really important that you understand not only the validation that we have with some of the required and the types that we have here of what it's expecting, which is good validation in our HTML, but we also have some validation going on here in JavaScript. And in real life, you're also going to have validation when it goes to the form or to the action, and it's actually sending those name value pairs into whatever file that you're actually putting the data into a database or whatever you're doing with that data. It will also have some really good validation on the back end as well to prevent hackers and things like that. And that is how we get our form to run properly.